Okay, so the next step is going to be our UV editor. I'm going to create a cube, okay, a soccer ball. So here, polygon primitives, soccer ball, because I want you to understand how they are UV mapped by default. What was the other one? A gear. Okay, and a cylinder. They already have the UV maps. Let's analyze how it works, okay? So let's start with the cylinder. I'm actually going to select these four and isolate them. Okay. So let's start with the cylinder. I have three shells. So I have the top, the faces here, and the bottom, okay? This is how they cut out the cube to open it and make it a flat thing. So everything you're going to see is going to pretty much show you how they cut the mesh and open it to make it visible on a texture, okay? I can make my texture visible here. This is my soccer ball. So basically I have all these hexagons and pentagons open out, so cut, and then open out so that it's flat. And the same goes for my gear. Okay, and these are the default UV mapped primitives. So how does my UV editor how is my UV editor arranged? I have my visibility icons here. So this is wireframe, this is shaded mode, this is distortion, which is going to look now white because it's not distorted at all. Okay, once it's distorted, you're going to see shades of blue and red. So blue is pinch, red is a stretch, or the other way around, doesn't really matter. Okay, we are going to see that in the other cases. Okay, if you want to save this UV map, it's here on the snapshot. So it's actually taking this and putting it, and you can open it on Photoshop and paint on top of it. Okay, and this is everything that has to do with your image. So right now I can see my image and I can click here and dim it out so that it's not so bright. Okay, I can overlay UV checker map on it. Okay, this is very typical. Almost every UV tool has this UV map. Okay, and then there are other tools here, for example, to see the real image ratio. Okay, another thing you have to see is that the texture is going to fit within this 0, 1, 0. So it's usually going to be 1 by 1. Okay, there are other softwares that you can put the texture in another proportion, but there's also other software there's also 1 by 1. So we are always going to try to have our texture, our map, in a proportion of 1 by 1, because a lot of the tools are thought so that they fit in this 1 by 1. Okay, so if I make it seamless, it's from here, there, or there, or there, or there. Okay, another thing, for example, here I'm going to select this and scale it down. Right now I don't see the other tiles. Okay, as soon as I start touching the border, it's going to repeat the same texture. Okay, and this is pretty much what we were doing with the seamless textures, that it was anyway repeating. It's just that we didn't see the seam. Okay, the seam would be here, these borders. So that's our space, and then we have all the tools in toolkit. So all the shortcuts, by the way, for transform work. So W, E for rotate, and R for scale, even B for sub-selection. Okay, and then you have more transform tools here to do specific rotations in 90 degrees. Okay, you have the tools to create the seams here, and you have tools for unfolding and arranging and aligning things. We're going to go over those tools, but just so that you know, you have almost all your tools here. And of course, there is a lot of tools. Okay, you just have to learn it little by little. What are they useful for? Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you is that you can figure out which are your seams because they are this thicker white line, okay? And I can see it also here on my viewport. They are a thicker white line. I can also see it here. So blue is just an edge, and my seam is a thicker white line, and the same case here on the cube. And in the cylinder, it's pretty straightforward. I have the top has a seam because it's cut apart, the bottom as well, and then there is a seam on the middle so that I'm able to open it up, okay? Let's check what are our UVs. I'm going to go on the cube, okay? And this is unwrapped really nicely. And if I select the UV, let's try to put our cube here, okay. If I select my UV, let's say I select these two over there, and I move them, okay? I'm actually stretching the texture, okay? That's pretty much, I'm not distorting the geometry at all. I'm just stretching the texture because it was already properly mapped, okay? What happens if I'm here on object mode, okay? I see the seams in the viewport. I don't see them in the editor. To see them in the editor, I either have to select UV or UV shell. And now I see the seams, okay? And this is on by default. That's to see the texture borders. If it's not on, you're also not gonna see the seams, okay? But it should be on for all of you. Now the next thing is, so we know our UVs, what are UV shells, okay? The UV shells is everything that is inside my seams. So right now, for example, I have different faces, but all these faces inside this white seam are my UV shell. So in the case of the cube, I have one shell. In the case of the gear, I have this seam and all these faces inside my seam.